right, hey everybody, this is Mr. Todd. As you see, this is Stories and Solutions. I'm here with actually two guests, and one of them is a former uh, co-host. We've been on a few times, is Super Malaman, and I have a new guest here, and it's Tlaloc, and he's out in what do you say, Missouri?
Hmm.
Okay, so we have Missouri, we have Hawaii, and I'm in California. So I think this is it just actually shows how people that I've never met you obviously that are across the world that can get together, to have discussions about things. And this is a good thing. So I appreciate you coming on the show.
Happy to be here.
Thank you, sir. It's a pleasure.
Um yeah, I wish I could this isn't Club Shay Shay, but I wish I could hand you a drink or whatever you're
I got this old Feta container I'm drinking water out of, so this is why I get advice.
I just have water.
Same as
Yeah.
So
So
too.
now I don't know if this is the right um pronounce not pronunciation, the right way of the topic, but I read what you sent me and the permaculture. So I I want to be educated in the world, obviously, but I want to learn too. Um, in my what I read, I felt permaculture was kind of like having a what do they call them in your backyard when you compost, like a compost, and you use the elements of the world, like the soil, whatever it is, and by what you're putting in there of abundance, it it then like grows into something else. And that's making its own like environment almost. Am I in the right like in the right
you're heading in the right direction, yeah.
okay. That's kind of what I took from it. And I was like, okay, I don't know how ignorant that sounds, but that's what I took in.
Yeah.
So can you tell me what you do?
Yeah. Okay. Malachi, should I go first or should you? Because I will ramble forever.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Duke.
All right. So I manage rain gardens for the county of St. Louis. And basically, a rain garden, it's three things in one. It's an ecosystem, it's a garden, and it's a piece of stormwater infrastructure. The short version is it's like you ever drive around, you see like it's like a ditch on the side of the road with like plants in it.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
That's a rain garden. It's essentially a way to manage stormwater because if you don't manage it right, you get floods. And
Right.
cities are full of, impermeable surfaces, lots of concrete, so things flood very quickly. And the idea of the rain garden is you have this patch of dirt essentially that filters the water and gets a lot of like the little like just trash and stuff out of it. And that way when it goes into the stormwater system, it doesn't damage the infrastructure as much. And
Mm-hmm.
this is dirt, so why don't we put plants in? And so you put the plants in there, and then the plants absorb a lot of the toxins like runoff from people's lawns. People over fertilize their lawns. That excess fertilizer gets in the water. It causes all kinds of havoc later on. So if we run it through some plants, the plants will eat it essentially, and then you get cleaner water. And if you make those plants native plants, then you get like this little pocket ecosystem that it promotes biodiversity and such. And if you make it pretty, then the people who live there are happy about it too. So
Mhm.
that's the short version. And my job is essentially to make sure it does all three of those jobs effectively at the same time. Got to look nice, it's got to be native, and got to manage stormwater effectively. And I got like 50 of them. And I just kind of drive around town all day and go to my office and plan and make things work.
Mhm.
Wow.
Great job.
That that's awesome. I actually out here I haven't got much uh headway, but I actually wrote to a couple of the congressmen here because I was trying to I don't know if you guys know who Andrew Yang is.
Yeah,
Uh
I know.
Yeah.
yeah, so I follow him on Instagram, and I actually was trying to talk to him about like rezoning
Mhm.
because I was seeing how if if you have, or I think the problem is if you have a sectioned off, like, they put everything in square miles, right? So you section off something, um, like this, this rectangle we have, and cut it in half, and cut it into fours. You're gonna have uh all kinds of people in there, but when you have poor people that are with the rich people, you have your homeless problem. If you had the poor people in one section and the factories or whatever you want to call it that deliver to like a food for less or something that is zoned for that economic area of those people, right? There's crime is lower. You're over on that side and you're able to give them what they're able to buy, not
Mhm.
put Gucci and then they can't afford it, so they steal,
Yeah.
right? And then you go to the next section and you have your industrial section. Then you go to the next section with the middle class. And then the next to the middle class is the upper class,
Mhm.
right? So I'm trying to get him on the show.
Mhm.
And
That'd be awesome.
That'd be sick.
I'm gonna debate that. I think the kind of the issue with a lot of that when it comes to urban planning, and maybe T can speak more on this, but a lot of the stuff is we kind of inherited the world as it is, and restructuring it in a more ideal way would cost an astronomical amount. And like when you're bringing these things up, the amount of planning that has to go into it, and the amount of conflicting interests that we have to constantly navigate in urban city planning is insane. I mean, just a small example is on Maui, or maybe it's Maui, or maybe it's Kauai. They're having a huge issue with building affordable housing, right? And they want to do it in an area, of course, that's not even close to a lot of people's property. But what people are afraid of, the people who own all the property out there, is affordable housing is going to increase the population of undesirable people, of people who could afford affordable housing, you know what I mean? So what they want is to create a zone that is exclusively for them. And that draw of resources is going to affect everything, right? When everyone is like in New York City, for example, everyone is within proximity to each other. You got rich folks, you got poor folk, you got homeless folk. All of the public areas and things that people use together are basically pulling funds from every layer of society. Like the rich people are basically supplying the major amount of funds because they're still living in the same city, right? It was one of
okay.
the similar. If you separate people too far, if you create segregation, what you will actually end up doing is creating ghettos because people will be there'll be no money in the community that is off to the side. And of course, we can in an ideal world, we would be able to use the tax money from rich people to bolster up the environment of the poor people. But without that intermingling, I think that the quality of life for the average person is going to go down. The rich people are going to be they're going to love it, but I don't think that will benefit because of what's a good word for it? The dynamics that have to emerge from the interaction of the classes eventually raises all boats. It becomes almost an average. If you separate people by class and economic status, then you will get a drastic difference in that industrial area. When it comes to zoning and stuff like that, the industrial areas have completely different rules. Like they're going to be dumping toxic waste over on top of the poor folks down the street, and nobody's going to be able to complain because there's no one with any economic or political power in that domain that will be able to speak up for those people.
Yep.
And we can assume that it would be different, but I'm not optimistic about that at all. I think that it's important to keep people in close proximity.
I think that mine is more in the sense of you have a section of people, when I say industrial, you have a section of people that are workers.
Uh,
Those
Oh, they
workers,
live.
right? So I'm actually cutting down pollution because you don't have to drive anywhere. So like they have these 15-minute cities out here that are going on. I
Without
don't
me.
like, yeah, I don't like those. Like where you're locked in, you can't go anywhere. Like you can only go 15 minutes north, south, east, west in a
Oh,
car, right? And they
huh.
already they already told us that 2050 that they want us to have these electric cars, so therefore they can't go past 10 miles faster than whatever is posted. So to me, you should, if that's the case, then centralize, okay, workers, if you came from military, or if you don't have money, or you came from another country, well, you're gonna have to come here and work. So then this is the area you should live in. And the type of job that you get is based on, you know, like obviously your aptitude. Go ahead.
Yep, I'm horrible habit interrupting people, so I just raise
No,
my
it's
hand.
all good.
Um, I I hate traffic on like for it feels personal. It feels like a personal attack from God. I hate traffic with a burning passion. So I've looked into it, and the short answer is public transportation has to happen because cars are stupid, or
Mhm.
rather, like when we're all going to the same place, we don't each need 5 human beings worth of space.
Mhm.
And then like you can't communicate to other people beyond a blinker. So everyone's angry and everyone's trapped in this little tiny bubble where they're alone and pissed off at everybody else. And we all just want to get where we're going. Like
Mhm.
it's and 15-minute cities is also stupid because it's like Malachi said, like you can't when you isolate people, you they develop separately and they don't like each other anymore. You have to
Mhm.
connect them. And if you don't connect them, then they grow to hate each other, or especially when there's severe economic disparities. And Singapore is really interesting for this kind of thing. I was listening to Joe Rogan, and he was interviewing this lady who is a nonprofit that translates books that are forbidden in the Middle East. They translate into Arabic and sneak them into the Middle East. But she's from Singapore, and so he's like, "What do you think wrong with America compared to Singapore?" And she's quiet for a second, and then she says, "You guys value your civil liberties too much." And then he's like, and then me and him in the same reaction. He's like, "Okay, so for me, that sounds crazy. What you just said,
Yeah,
as an American, that sounds like an insane statement to
exactly.
make."
That's the point.
Yeah, so please explain. And so in Singapore, they housing is like it's a city state, so everything's apartments. And so you have an apartment building, and you have like the 1 bedroom to the 5 bedroom apartments, which basically like kind of denote money. Poor people have 1 bedrooms, rich people have 5 bedrooms, right? So they lay out the rooms so that the 1 bedroom guy is next to the 2nd bedroom guy and the 3rd bedroom guy. The
Mhm.
2nd bedroom guy is next to the first and the second. But you don't have the 1st bedroom guy next to the 5 bedroom guy
Right,
because they're
right,
Yeah,
too different. They're never gonna mesh, bro. Like,
yeah.
right.
you
That's how
live in
my
different
cities are.
worlds. Yes, and so in this kind of like thoughtful integration, you have more social cohesion because you hang out with your neighbor who's different, but not so different you're never going to get along. And
Uh,
here's the other crazy one: they have mandated racial makeups for different neighborhoods, which is crazy. Like, but like, so the way it works is like the population of Singapore is like 80% Chinese and like 15% Indian and like 7% something else, which I know doesn't add up, but you get the point.
mhm,
So they have that racial makeup has to then be reflected in each neighborhood. So like
mhm.
if you want to live in a neighborhood, they'll be like, "We are at capacity for your race, bro. Go somewhere else." And that's
Mm.
That's
insane.
crazy.
And
Yeah.
I'm not saying that would ever work in America, but I'm just saying that like they're the idea that you can fix problems by making a 15-minute city is just it's too simple.
It's a
Like
it's a shortcut.
yeah, exactly. And at the end of the day, like cars are not good
Yeah.
for urban environments. They're simply not. You can't make them individual. Like if we had individual cars, like that motorcycle
Little
from Tron,
pods. Yeah, yeah.
yes. Like, bro, I would love a Tron motorcycle. Like, I just need a box with an engine and airbags and like
Yeah.
AC. That's all I need. I don't want to drive a 5-person vehicle to go get milk. Like, it just seems stupid.
It's asinine.
And
Yeah.
yes, and like the car thing just feeds into all manner of social inequality. Like I saw a paper a long time ago. I think it was from Harvard or something. But the biggest indicator for upward economic mobility is roads. How
Mhm.
close are you to a major road? It is your ability to connect with other people and make the connections that make you move on with your life.
Yeah.
Like your proximity to a road matters more than your race, than if you got a dad, than if you're poor. It matters more than anything. And
Mhm.
when you look, I read that, and then I start, and now whenever I look at like read about some place that's poor, I look at it on Google Maps every single time. You're not going to see a road. And what's the
Yeah.
first thing people build when they have money is they build roads
For the
Yeah.
road.
because like that's why like NGOs fail in like Africa because they show up and they build a building and it's like, all right, cool. Now how do we
How
get
do I
shit over
get
there?
there? Yeah.
How do we get it to the market? We don't need you to build me a building. We've been building buildings for 30,000 years. We need a road that a
Yeah.
car can drive on so we can get from A to B and sell our shit.
Yeah.
And
100%.
I don't even know where I started with this, but cars suck. And 15-minute cities is stupid. You
Yeah.
need
I don't agree with the
buses.
15-minute cities. I still think like um New York type of travel as far as the train system. Um, or it doesn't even have to be a train system. It could be like a caterpillar, like how you were saying, you just need pods and everybody hops in their pod
That'd be
and
great.
you know what I mean? And it takes you, there's a caterpillar system, it takes a certain amount of people and everything is,
Hmm.
automated. And I still say if you have the lower class next to the middle class or next to the uh industrial and middle class, and then you have the wealthier, everybody needs something from the next person. And it
Mhm.
still crosses back over because the wealthy are still going to employ the ones that are the lower end because they
Yeah.
want cheap labor. So
Mhm.
I'm saying in the sense of what you need is closer to you. And if you need someone, those people that are next to you are going to need you
Mhm.
too. So
Yes.
there should be less of a divide. It should be more of a like uh of a tribal thing is what I was looking at it as.
So,
And so that's kind of how I wanted to zone. And also because when you think about drug problems and you think about where it is, you can go to the middle on your way to Vegas and there's nothing there, nothing
mhm.
developed. But if you put one of those cities, the owners of those, regardless of what we think, oh, okay, Vegas, there's millionaires, they still have to live somewhere. So you have that city where they have their space, you have the industrial part of it, and you have the middle class that work in the hotels or whatever it is you're doing. And then the lower class are the ones that really want rehab
Mhm.
and that's their job. They're able to have a job while they're going to rehab, while they're fixing their life. Obviously, if they're not doing what they're supposed to do, they're going to be phased out like gentrification type of thing. But
Mhm.
the opportunity is there,
Mhm.
and then you have the opportunity to move up into the middle class. The middle class has an opportunity to move up, to either the tech and industrial or to the upper class if they go to degree wise or know someone, whatever it may be. But
Mhm.
you know what I mean. But then it ends up it kind of just feeds itself.
Mhm.
So
Well, it's interesting. I guess my question then is when we think about these kind of complex ecosystems of people, it looks like we're stepped beyond just organisms. How do we get society to, I don't know, take these ideas seriously? I mean, permaculture itself is, I mean, it's been around for a while, but like how frequent, how popular is it? You know what I mean? Like how powerful of an idea is it? I mean, your job, Mr. T, is relatively new, right? Like people
Oh,
haven't always
yeah.
been doing this, right?
Let me tell you about it. So like these rain gardens, the first one was built in 2010, and then no one took care of them for like 10 years. And so the county hired someone to be like, hey, go figure out what's going on with these things and make them work. And then that was my predecessor. And then I got on the job. Then she quit like 2 weeks later. And so all of a sudden I'm just like
You got
I
job.
was yeah, I was like I was under the impression like I'm gonna work with this person who's in charge, and then we're gonna do the thing. And then 2 weeks later, like, no, no, now you're the guy. And now it's my job. So I'm just like, all right, here we go. I'm gonna read a lot and we're gonna make this shit happen. But yeah, that the anyway, it's the yeah, the a lot of this stuff is very new and it's being integrated into cities because the cities, all of our cities were made in like almost all of our stuff is post World War II. It was like the high point of the century for like the Western world. You know what I mean? Like we kicked the Nazis' ass, we're the shit. And then they turned all that bomb making equipment into fertilizer making equipment. So then you got the chemical fertilizers that
Roundup.
produce stupid amounts of food in an incredibly fast time. And I there was this thing that's just it's like haunting because it's so wrong now that we've come back to our senses, but it's like the plant doesn't care where its nitrogen comes from. It just wants nitrogen.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
that is true. But the
Yeah.
plant also needs an ecosystem to function in. Otherwise, it's besieged by diseases and pests. And so like they weren't wrong, but now here we are paying the price all these decades later. And the hard part is the infrastructure, like you said, Malachi, like everything's already built a certain way. And what interests me is like the practical boots on the ground. Like, what do we do now? Because we have all these ideas and all this technology and all this science. So why don't we use it? And like a great example of that is that like LA, like public transportation is a great idea. Everyone agrees. You're not going to build a subway system in LA. You're not going to rip up those ginormous highways, those arteries of the city and build a train overnight. So like my thinking is you should get buses. Buses can use the highway to take some of those lanes, make them bus only lanes, and make them go all over the place. And I'm not the first to think about this. I've read several like papers and articles where like people are like devoting their lives to like LA for the love of God, get some buses. It makes sense.
Yeah.
But like that, like it's like you're not gonna like there's plenty of pie in the sky people like we need trains. It's like what interests me is practical solutions like that.
Yeah.
Like
We have trams out here.
that's cool.
Um, so it's kind of like they function like a above ground train.
Hmm.
And then they have like a yellow line which goes um it's more like inner city. Like
Oh yeah. I've seen those.
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
I was saying I've seen those before when I was
Oh,
out there.
okay. Yeah, so that's like the inner city. And then there's like a red line, which is the subway, and that's like Hollywood area. Now they're building one that's supposed to go to the beach. Then you have one out here, and then you have an orange line, which is above ground, and that's the valley. It crosses the valley. So there's depending on the section you're in, there's a way, but you still have to drive to the metro
Thing.
station
And then
to
park.
correct. So um I feel like that causes more theft.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
yeah, because people know like I tell my wife this. I say, don't ever be comfortable when you're with the kids or yourself because there's people's jobs that are to sit around all day and study your habits.
Hmm.
And when they see you, they know when you come to that store, they know when you go to home, they know, you know, whatever it is. So the minute you park your car at the metro, they know you're gone for 8 hours. So they can, take their sweet time. They're not gonna look suspicious. Open up your car, sit in your
Yeah.
car. You know what I mean?
And that's one
Uh,
of those things that the underlying complexities of any issue, right? Like any solution that you think you can't possibly, I mean, it's just math, right? Like reality has infinitely more variables than what we can imagine and calculate.
There
So
are
there's
more
always going to
things
be
there are more things in heaven and earth than are dreamt of in your philosophy.
exactly.
I like that.
And there's another problem too, that I wanted to ask what you guys thought of. Essentially, whenever you free up energy in a system, people think that that will make things better, right? That's like, oh, we're using less, coal because we're using a lot of solar now, right? And what ends up happening instead is essentially that you start spending more energy because you're getting enough from another place. So you just double up the amount that you're spending and it eliminates the increase in efficiency that you've gained. If we were to get more buses in LA, that might reduce a lot of public transportation or the cars at first. but then eventually more people are just going to start buying cars because there's less people who are driving
On the
before.
road.
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. So it just ends up feeding back
Oh,
into
but
itself.
I don't think that's going to happen because like everyone, you already have to have a car in LA. There's no one in LA who just doesn't have a car. Like you simply cannot function in that city without a vehicle. Like so, I don't think it would put more people on the road because everyone's already on the road. Like you're already at max capacity. Maybe.
Possibly. Possibly, or what'll happen is the amount of people that you can fit in the city will increase. The people
Yes. No, you're right.
outside of the city will start to come into the city, and the amount of cars on the road will essentially stay the same. Is what's going
You're
to
right.
happen.
No, you're right because that's the paradox that creates massive highways. Is you add more lanes so people can get there faster, then you get more people on the road, and it feeds itself forever. So you
Exactly.
get a what is
Now
that
you have
road?
you have a bunch of buses and
Dude,
also a bunch of cars, and they're all
boy,
in bricked up traffic. So that's the hard part about humans is that whenever we find space, wherever we find space, we create. It's the same thing with storage, right? If you start, oh, I'm gonna get a bigger closet, and you're just gonna buy more clothes, and it's gonna be just as full as it was when you had less clothes, right? Because that's how humans operate. We find space and then we fill it. So it's kind of an endless cycle unless we attack the underlying psychology. Like what is the psychological problem that's driving this? That's kind of what I was getting at earlier about some of these issues, right? Like the ecosystem awareness. I used to have this theory in college, and I still don't know how true it is. But if you look at evolutionary biology, it talks about how whenever humans entered an area, the ancient humans, we would pretty much eat everything. We'd kill everything. It would be if it was slow, it was dinner. If it wasn't clever, then it was dinner right away. Over time, these populations that we relied upon, the mammoths and the giant sloths and things like that, they became extinct because they couldn't breed faster than we could eat them. And the people who kind of inherited the world that was full of all these stories of giant creatures were told that you had to be more conservative if you wanted to survive, right? Because humans in the past had eaten themselves, eaten the environment to
Extinction.
completely radically transform. And so, if we wanted to prevent that from happening, we had to adopt ideas that were um, that would protect the environment. And I think that we're kind of reaching the apex of that now, where our society, which became extremely, due to necessity, and not to say that we didn't have to do those things in the moment. Especially we're talking about World War II, like uh, people genuinely thought that was the end of the world. Like this guy was trying to take over the whole planet. We had to mobilize everything that we had. We had to turn all of science towards one goal. And you combine that with the natural exploitation that was occurring in America, because people thought for a long time that America was infinitely bountiful, right? Those kind of ideas possess people enough to drive the planet in almost complete extinction, and of course everyone else is trying to compete with us. So it was a contagious idea. What I want to ask you guys is kind of how can we accelerate the ideas of permaculture, of soil restoration, and get these things, because I know there's lots of people who've been working in this in the trenches. One guy in a back office trying to save the world, but it's not enough. Like T's one guy. I'm one guy. You're one guy, Mr. Todd. How do we spread it so that it becomes popular culture, so that everyone knows about this and everyone is practicing and everyone is pushing it? And when these people end up in politics and power, it's just the default. It's just the psychology is built.
Well, I could say this. Um, try to make sure I choose my words right. So, because I'll be criticized. So when you look at the culture, the way our culture is, it's popular based, it's trend based, it's everything is algorithms or whatever the arc is. And if you think about, I'm just giving you an example. Football is no longer football because football is driven by Taylor Swift right now, right? So they can fix games based on her popularity. You can fix an election based on if she endorses whichever side, because she has a legion of people that are not going to think for themselves. They're going to go with that trend, right? So if we have these, I forget what the name of the bugs, the worms are, but they eat the plastic.
Mhm.
So the same way we have the runoff, you would have like how you had T was talking before you came on. We are talking about ironically about math and about I was learning about the storm channels. And while he was saying this, I was thinking, oh yeah, I wonder if they should have like right before it gets to the ocean where the river runoff is, that there's just an abundance of those things. And it's sitting there able to eat the plastic and it goes back into into the environment. Like you have sand, and sand is primarily ground up rocks and poop from the crabs and whatever else, right? So, if you have a catch basin there, then that's for or wherever it is, like they're in just different areas. That's takes care of the pollution of the plastic. I still think rich people would kind of lead the charge because they have the land. So so going from compost to, yeah, you have a compost, but you also have this mealy worm kind of in your plastic. I still think the trend should change to ban plastic, and you can use aluminum, you can use cardboard, although the cardboard, um, which doesn't make sense to me. It shouldn't come from the trees if we are able to 3D print.
Mhm.
So, oh, go ahead.
Hey, cover a lot of bases here.
Yeah, sorry.
Um,
I think kind of strange.
no, you're good. We all do here. The cardboard. Cardboard is interesting. It's great fertilizer actually, or rather, it's good mulch because it breaks right back down. It's just so like Amazon boxes. Like
Yeah,
I shred all my Amazon boxes and I use them as mulch in my yard.
that's
It's
even better.
fabulously, and then also for breaking down gross stuff. It helps. It really helps break down gross stuff really quickly. The I read in a book once, just thinking about all things we've been talking about. Um, Money is like water in that it pools in places.
Mhm.
It's drawn to itself. Wherever
Hmm.
it gathers more. It has gravity in
Mhm.
that way. And to spread the ideas of permaculture and such, like you said, Malachi, there's no silver bullet. There's no one person or one thing that's going to do it. But one thing that I really like and agree with is the saying, to think globally but act locally.
Mhm.
Like the answer to the question is that you do what you can where you're at, people you
Hmm.
know, and that is your contribution. And
Mhm.
in American culture, we have this obsession with like the hero and the rebel and the hero. It's always one thing or one person
Yeah.
that then solves all these other things, and that's simply not how anything in the actual world works. Like I
Mhm.
mean, even when you look at the chemical fertilizers, like that, the idea like this is the silver bullet that we're
Yeah.
going to feed the world, and it has completely back. No, it worked, but it worked, but at what cost? Because now
Yeah.
Right.
here we are,
Right.
and that's the I feel like one of the underlying notions of permaculture is that like you work with what you have where you're at. There
Mhm.
is no one size fits all for anything. What works in LA is not going to work here. Is not going to work in Hawaii.
Mhm.
Right.
And I think that what we should do is you just like make a garden, grow stuff, and then when you grow food, give it to your neighbor. Bro, like
Hmm.
the first time you eat a plant or a vegetable that grew 10 feet away from you, it's like food in HD. Like I
Yeah.
can still remember the first time I had a tomato that I like picked off the vine, and I
Mhm.
was like, "What have I been eating this whole time? This is delicious."
You've been
Right.
eating zombies.
Yeah, what is that,
You've been eating zombies is what we call them.
dude? Yes, dude. It's like this, like, bro. It was on a ship for like 3 weeks before it even got to me. Like the flavor's gone. It's a shadow of what it was. Or like I made pesto. I made pesto once with basil. I grew in like a fucking tin can in a parking lot, and it was like pesto in HD. It was the best pesto I ever had because the leaves literally went from the
We're
plant to the
inside. Yeah.
blender in like within 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And so like when you give people, when you show that to people, they want more of it. It just tastes better.
Yeah.
Or
But
like
people are lazy.
they are, but like if you that's why you got to give them the food so they have an incentive. You can talk about ideas all day, bro. But when I give you, if like, or in Hawaii, well, no, everyone gets pineapple in Hawaii. No, Hawaii actually does have a local pineapple industry. But like when you give someone fresh, delicious veggies that you grew yourself, they then taste the difference and incentivizes them to like maybe not grow it themselves, but like seek it out. You know what I'm saying? Like, and it's
Yeah,
one of those
but
things you have to taste it yourself.
no, I agree with you. But rich people can go to restaurants and get that,
Oh
right?
yeah, but this isn't
So
about.
you're talking about like the lower class or the middle class,
Yes,
or
I'm talking about actual people. Like rich people are a different thing over there. Like I'm talking about like
like
actual like
the average
populace.
per. Well, so out here we used to have these gardens, and in the inner cities. So like out here, Compton was considered like ghetto. It's not that bad anymore, but I mean it is to a point. But you have like Compton, Inglewood, like what you heard, if you just listen to NWA or something, they're gonna
Yeah,
tell you, like Watts, but there were these gardens that the city allowed these, I forget the guy's name, but they allowed these gentlemen to put there, and then whatever he grew, that people can come from your neighborhood and pick. So if you said, "Oh, I'm gonna make dinner tonight for my family," and everybody knew each other, right? It's a neighborhood. I need a head of lettuce, and da 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 da, and what was left over, you gave to your neighbor. Well, they started, I say sabotaging, but they started targeting it as in you need a permit, you need the this, and that's what I mean by like I think when you have less government and people that are just using their feelings, you're more apt to share
Mhm.
because you know your neighbor versus the
yes.
government, you know what I mean? Versus the government saying, "Oh, you're doing something enterprising and kind." Well, you need to pay the man,
Yeah,
which
that's
you know what I
Where are
mean?
your papers?
Right. It
where you're
takes away.
yeah.
So now we have out here, and this is what I'm trying to stay on the permaculture thing, is out here now we have a thing where you don't need a license, you don't need anything. You can set up on any street sidewalk and they barbecue. They have, I'm telling you, like every like 30 feet at this point by my house, there's a food truck or someone with their grill. There's people that are like making potatoes and they have their space. You're not paying taxes and but here's the problem. You don't know where they got their food from. You don't know how old it is, right? So there's no regulation there, but it's allowed. But like I said, you go to the inner city and that's
Mhm.
now taken away from you. So I don't think it's a problem of can we do it? Because if you go to another country, they have wells and everybody
Mhm.
had to share from those wells. Well, you can have the same thing with like your methods and how I was saying like those worms that eat the plastic. There's a place that you have recycle centers. It's the same thing. You dump those in, those things are eating the plastic. It's just a matter of there's always a government entity that enters into something that to me is just not needed, and then it destroys everything.
Yeah, but you mentioned yourself the kind of the issue without government, right? Is that when there's no regulation, there's no control of quality, and it's kind of off the trust system. And I guess the problem is like, do you trust your neighbor at that point? Like, are you willing to have faith in humanity in general enough to leave them free to make decisions like that? I mean, it kind of goes back to what T was saying about Singapore and how they say that we value our civil liberties too much. And I think that part of that comes from this rationalist idea that not everybody is worthy of, or I guess capable of being trusted in that way. If we completely give everyone absolute freedom, of course, overregulation is a problem, clearly, but we have to find some line, and that's kind of the art of government. Go ahead, T.
The yes, but I also think that the our society has taken individualism to a stupid extreme. In that, like, for instance, like if you're selling food to your neighbor, if you make your neighbor sick, that
They'll
neighbor's gonna hate
come
you now.
back.
Yeah,
Yeah,
That's what I was
they're your
thinking.
neighbor, son. You
that's a
can't
bad
shit where you
plan.
eat.
See, that's what I was
So
thinking.
like in that way, and like there's a time and place for government. Like governments are great for dealing with, like multinational corporations and warfare and all that other kind of stuff. Government doesn't have a place in a community garden.
That's
Like
right.
like